Welcome to Cross Border Interviews. This is the show where we dive into the insights of municipal political leaders from across Canada. Now, our mission on this show is quite simple: shine a light on the dedicated individuals who day in and day out work around the council table to shape the communities that we and they call home. And for today's episode, we are honored to be sitting down and chatting with the town of Truro, Nova Scotia Mayor, Kathy Hinton. The town of Truro is a community of approximately 14,000 people and is located in central Nova Scotia, coining it the hub of Nova Scotia. Truro's location, amenities, and attraction makes it a great home base for you to explore central Nova Scotia and the Bay of Fundy. Across Canada, our cities, towns, villages, and rural communities are alive with stories waiting to be told. Stories of innovation and economic development, resilience in the face of the housing challenges, and the financial hurdles municipalities overcome every day. At the Cross Border Network, we bring these stories to life. From coast to coast to coast, we're connecting Canadians to the issues shaping our communities and showcasing the people working tirelessly to make them thrive. With your support, we can expand our reach, amplify more voices, and shine a light on the challenges and triumphs of municipal life. For as little as $3.99 a month, you can help us grow and continue sharing the stories that matter most. Join us today and be part of this important mission. Together, we can tell more stories, build stronger communities, and make a real difference. Support the Cross Border Network now. Visit www.crossborderinterviews.ca today. Kaleb, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about yourself and talking about the great community of the town of Fort Frances. Before we get into the town issues, I want to get to know about the man behind the persona a little bit. And I got to ask you a very simple question that I've started all my interviews off, so you no exception. Where does your sense of duty to serve your community come from, Kaleb?
Not to be cliche, but I think it came from my family roots. I had a mom and dad that were very involved in not-for-profits. My dad spent over 25 years in the Kinsman in Elliott Lake over in the other side of the North Shore. And then later on in life, they were helping the Lions Club just west of Fort Frances in Emo. So always a sense of community and giving back and just the mantra of the former Bob Lidke from Fort Frances: the price we pay for a good community is volunteerism, and I think that just rings through not just my family but also the community that is town of Fort Frances.
So, what was it about the political draw, the aura of political office that drew you? Because many people would say, if I'm going to give back, I'm going to give back like your father and mother did through volunteerism, through community groups. But you chose also to go a step further and go the political route. What was that based on?
So I think outside of like the family values, I would say that my post-secondary education at Providence University College in Otterburn, Manitoba, instilled things like character, leadership, and service as part of a leadership fabric and makeup. So even from a young age, I was kind of just always navigating and gravitating towards giving back, not just through business and through community, but getting to the table where decisions are made that can impact, hopefully for the positive, but still run communities as a business and try to bring, positive to not just social issues, but, making balanced priorities with infrastructure, tourism, and hopefully economic development. Like, I know a lot of those are buzzwords, but, those have greater impacts than just what one person can do. And I think being part of a team has always been something that I've done well at. I've played a lot of sports. I played college soccer. Like, it was more team before me. And I feel that we have a great team here between the balance of council, our mayor, and our administration. For the first time in a long time, I would like to say that that's really true.
What was it about the municipal draw, though? Because Background could have gone provincially, could have gone federal, could have gone school board, but at the end of the day, you chose municipal. What was it about the giving back there at that table that you thought that team instead of me approach would work for you?
I was just more drawn to more of the grassroots. I have run provincial campaigns for a couple of the people in the ridings locally. Uh, I just felt that my connection to the people here and my family roots are keeping me in the present. I have a 8-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter. That if I did go provincial or federal, that I would be, geographically estranged from my children. I didn't want to have to uproot them to Ottawa or Toronto. Um, they have a lot of cousins here. They play sports here. They're very connected to their indigenous culture here. So I didn't want to take that away from them. And I don't have a problem in going the long way. I feel that I mean, I was appointed. I wasn't elected, right? So I was appointed with probably a year and just a little over a year and a half left to the next cycle. So I just am thankful for the opportunity, and I'm willing to put my best foot forward and hopefully make some positive impacts along the way. But yes, the goal is to eventually run either provincially or federal. A little humor. My wife prefers Ottawa to Toronto, so
And
I'm
from what
assuming
I
we're gonna.
understand, is a happy wife is a happy life at the end of the day. So
I mean, the joke is
congratulations on
like,
running federally.
yeah, congratulations. So yeah, so we haven't like formalized that track plan yet, but I would say that we're leaning, you know, down the road that might be a possibility.
So you kind of spoiled my next question, but you are one of the few people on my show who have actually been appointed to the position of councillor rather than being elected. Now, you did run in 2022 as a candidate, and then a few years later, I believe there was a vacancy on town council, and then in Ontario, they call for nominations from anyone in the general public, and then council gets to appoint a new councillor to the position. That's a unique way to get involved in politics and get on council. Do you feel it takes away from how you got there and how you look at issues, or do you still look at issues as if you were elected by the general public?
No, so I look at it as a great opportunity to um, not so much convince the electoral, but to earn their trust and earn their respect. We've actually had two vacancies in this election cycle. One was appointed. I was the only other person that ran on the ticket last time. I finished with 913 votes that entrusted me with the responsibility of council. I'm trying to, like I said, earn more of that coming into this next cycle. But we've also had another vacancy since I came on. So I'm actually not the rookie at the table for this cycle. There's another councillor that came on after me with previous experience from another municipality, but would be the rookie, for lack of a better description, for this cycle with this team. So I feel that I'm bringing a lot to the table in a lot of different aspects, especially culture and rec and economic development. That's where my special interest, I would say, motivates me municipally. I sit on the business improvement area for Scott Street Committee, the Townsend Theatre Committee. I've also just started a notice of motion that has gone to committee level now for an off-leash dog park that we're going to be bringing to Fort Francis, hopefully in the next year. And then I'm also on the not-for-profit housing committee. So I am being utilized in some of my strengths. And then I'm also bringing things forward that I feel bring us more current and more modern in comparison to, say, more South-centric Ontario municipalities. So we are a single tier, we are a small municipality, but I feel like we have similar struggles and challenges to the rest of the province. It's just a matter of scale.
The role of a council member is quite challenging in 2025 because you have to make some very tough decisions around that council table. And I'm going to break some news here for anyone who's listening, and I've broken it out a few times on this show, that your votes will never be universally loved by the people that you represent. There's always going to be people who disagree with you. How do you make the tough decisions that you know at the end of the day you can lay your head in the pillow thinking to yourself, I've done the best I can do, knowing that there's going to be some people, whether it comes to budget, planning, recreation, that they're just not going to be happy with the way you voted?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, how I'm looking at it from my perspective only at the moment is since I was appointed this time, it's a little bit different than having a true mandate of what I stand for as an individual and where I align. So right now I'm leaning towards our strategic plan, our community improvement plan, and figuring out where I see that fitting in those. Like our strategic plan is very robust. I think it's over 28 points. It's almost too large for a community of
Oh,
this size. So that's kind of where I'm leaning on, and then I'm also leaning on the experience of the council and mayor that we do have. We have a lot of experience around the table. Some of them have been involved in politics for over 15 years. So even though I'm new, there is experience around the table that I can bounce opinions off of. We do have an open door policy with our administration. I can walk into the CAO's office or the town clerk and be like, hey, am I right on this kind of line of thought? How do I best present it? They help me kind of clean up notices of motion and make recommendations. One thing I can say about our CAO, Marcel Michaels, that he does really well is that he gives us options. It's not just like, here, vote yes or no on this. He's like, okay, this is the challenge that we're having. And then here's the 3 or 4 ways that I see that we best proceed. And then we have open debate amongst the council and come to a decision that we can all, maybe not all of us fall asleep on, but at least say, we had positive debate on it.
I will say something, and this is just a little off the cuff remark because the Alberta based podcast on municipal affairs talking to the Fort Francis, Ontario councillor. But Marcel Michaels is a great guy. He was the former CAO of Coronation, I believe. But before that, he was the former mayor of Hinton, Alberta. So you have a man who has very deep breadth of knowledge in your as your CAO. So good job on getting him there. That's just my own little personal plug there. Um, I want to sort of talk about the issue of the bouncing of ideas off your fellow counselors who have knowledge. That is great, but you also have to talk to the people. How much of a responsibility do you put on yourself to go talk to people in your community? Even though you were appointed, you have to get their understanding of where they believe the community is going to go. So, how important is it for you to listen to the community members as well when making decisions for the good of the people of Fort Francis?
Yeah, like I think that's very important. Being well read on the reports, as well as attending meetings or connecting with stakeholders in various different departments across the community. I'm also from a large family, so that helps me keep well connected in a lot of diverse networks. I have siblings that work in social service. I have siblings that work in the oil sands out west. I have some in mining and construction. So like I have a well breadth to rely on there. And then my wife and my children are Indigenous, so that kind of keeps me more connected with the Indigenous communities in the Treaty 3 area. Right now, that's very important work right now is the work that's done in Truth and Reconciliation, and that it's not just reconciliation, it's reconciliation. We have to have steps and partnerships that continue to build in the right way. And I feel like we're on the precipice of doing some really great things here in Fort Francis. And I'm looking forward to the next election cycle. I think it's going to be very positive for a lot of different reasons.
Is there an apathy within Fort Francis? Do you see? Because when I do these interviews with people from across Canada, with elected officials from across Canada, I should say, I often get the sense that there are some communities that there's the old mantra: as long as my water's turned on and my garbage is picked up at the end of the day, I really don't care what's going on at City Hall. Do you get a sense that there is a lack of engagement between residents and council? Not saying council doesn't engage with residents, but residents engaging with council. Or do you get people stopping you saying, hey, Kaleb, I want to talk about this issue because it's the most important issue to me that the municipality can solve?
Yeah, so obviously interacting with our residents is always important. I would say it's changing that landscape I don't think so much coming to town hall is the way that we're getting communicated with. I think it's more in person, maybe through social media. I think a lot of social media, yes, at times it can be fairly soapboxy, but I think that that kind of gives you at least a little bit of the maybe a snapshot in time of the pulse. I think that the challenge is not just communicating the final vote, but some of the debate and what the real truths are. Um, not getting wordy, but I think that communication not just changing, but I think that we have to get back to the basics, even as people. I think we're very disconnected as more that we are connected, if that makes sense. Like we have it in the palm of our hands, yet we don't reach out to very many people throughout a week. It's very social media centric, where it's finding something of interest, scroll, find something of interest, right? So that's one thing I have to say about our administration is our town clerk, Chelsea Gregg, and our deputy clerk, Ali, do a fantastic job of being relevant and being creative and finding ways to communicate across the platforms, as well as bring some new kind of ideas, like their elopement day. I think it's been now nationally covered on CBC News. So like we're becoming more fresh and more relevant, and I think that that's very exciting.
I want to turn to the town as a whole, but before I do that, I want to start with this preamble that I do on this show on a regular basis. So, for those who have listened to it before, just skip ahead about 15 seconds. For those who haven't, just stay with me. This is a conversation between the counselor and myself. This is not a motion of council, not a direction of council, not a policy of council. This is his opinion and his opinion alone. Now, it may line up with what's going on at council, but at the end of the day, he needs a majority of council members around the council table to vote in favor or against any motion, policy, or bylaw to direct administration to implement anything that has council's approval or disapproval. With that being said, again, this is the counselor's opinion. Counselor, in your opinion, as of recording this at the beginning of September 2025, what do you see as the biggest challenge or challenges facing the town of Fort Frances today?
I think it first comes down to housing. I think that housing is going to unlock a lot of the potential of Northern Ontario. I mean, we could sit here all day and talk about the chicken and the egg and what comes first. But from my perspective today, um, housing, if you don't have a place to live, you can't come here to work. And if it's taking you 3 to 6 months to find a residence or an apartment, you're not coming here to work. And I think the pressures on that have come to a breaking point. And I think we need to be creative at all levels of government to find solutions that make sense for, and there's not a cookie cutter project or a cookie cutter way to do this. I think each municipality has its intricate workings and ways to bring things to light. How I look at it is I think municipalities have the responsibility to make sure that their strat plans are up to date, their community improvement plans have some kind of value that developers can get excited about. And I think that the provincial and federal government need to kind of get back to, like, say, the 1970s when we had like great housing booms across the country. I think that we're overdue. I'm not going to sit here and say I have the solutions mapped out. But I think if we can get to the table and really put our hearts in the right place, that we can get this problem solved.
But that's great. Having the boom is great, but the sustainability growth is the big concern that a lot of people may have right now because we are seeing the aging infrastructure challenge that municipalities are faced with across this country right now. And do you get a sense, or do you know if Fort Frances is set up for a potential quote unquote housing boom? If a developer came in today and said, we want to build 20 new houses in Fort Frances, can the current infrastructure maintain or handle that potential housing boom? Or do you see yourself needing to fix the infrastructure before the housing comes? And I know you said you don't want to talk about the chicken and the egg, but developers won't come unless there's infrastructure in the ground.
Yeah, no, you've made a great point. So what I can answer with that, from my perspective, is that we have no development charges in Fort Frances. We are open.
Really?
Yeah, we have none, if not very little, low DC charges. We are very open for business. We're the service hub for 10 First Nation communities in the Treaty 3 area. We service a border town right across the river in International Falls as well. So we're well connected. We're geographically located right in the middle of Winnipeg, Thunder Bay, Minneapolis. Duluth is quite close. We have national distribution through CN Rail. We're very agricultural focused. So like we have a lot of the things that are checking the boxes. It's just I don't think we're on the radar.
What do you mean by that? Radar, as in like
Well,
Toronto radar,
yeah,
Ottawa, Toronto?
we're a tertiary market,
Okay.
and we're not a major metropolitan area by any means. So we are geographically challenged per se. So for an investor or developer to come to Fort Francis, it's a potentially a full day drive and or a flight to Thunder Bay and then a rent a car from Thunder Bay and a 4 hour drive. So my encouragement to investors and developers is to fly through the US, get into Minneapolis, get a connecting flight to International Falls, and then you're right next door. All you got to do is just come across the border. So it's a lot easier that way. But that simple disconnect from an investor and developer, I've gone to a lot of these conferences down in Toronto, and that's just too much of a disconnect. If they can't drive to it within a 4 hour drive, they're not interested. They can't keep their eyes on it as an asset, and they don't know the marketplace.
So how does the town move forward then? Because the last thing any municipality wants to do is become stagnant, because the S word in municipal governance, it means basically you're dying. So how do you see your role as council and councillor in ensuring that the community continues to grow in a sustainable way, but do it with developers? Because last time I checked, municipalities don't want to get into the role of building housing. And if they do, then I want to have that conversation with someone who wants to go on the record and say municipalities need to start building housing, because I just don't think it's feasible to do it. How do you see yourself as council and councillor in ensuring the growth continues to happen when developers may not see it as a feasible option?
Yeah, so I don't want to be the first person to go on the record that municipalities need to build housing. Now, that said, I do think that there is a role for municipalities when it comes to housing. We've had a project here on Front Street that built condos back in the day, and I believe, don't quote me, but I think they had to buy three of them to make the project go. So there is a role. I think what the challenge is you have to convince the residents that we're going to put tax revenue into that. And I know that most municipalities don't like to damper the private sector. They like to leave private sector to the private sector and then municipality to the municipality. So I think when you do get stagnant, though, you run that risk and you have to get creative. I feel that we may be in that time period again where we might just need a little bit of a nudge to get things going again. We have a lot of residents in our community that are living in too much house, if that makes sense. And I think if we have, whether it's condos or apartments or smaller houses for them to downsize to, I think that would kind of unclog our marketplace. I know that that's not maybe a province-wide theme, but that's what I'm seeing here. And I've been hearing from realtors in the area that say that that's the same.
Is real estate a hot commodity in Fort Francis right now?
Yes, I feel like it's been quite high for some time now. We've had impact from the new gold mine just west of Fort Francis that has brought a lot of industry. We've got a lot of exploration happening. We're also coming soon. We're anticipating a couple more industry projects in the energy sector. So we're being diligent. We're doing what we can, but we're definitely noticing that housing is definitely one of our problems. But like you've alluded to earlier, like the infrastructure, I can't sit here and say our infrastructure is up to date. The whole province has an infrastructure deficit.
Whole
And
country does.
yeah, the whole country. I just wanted to talk about our province for
Yeah.
sure. But yeah, like a lot of the development and those investments were made, at least in our community anyway, pre 1970, when the Fort Francis Mill had its big expansion, 71, 72, 73. So we're well overdue with starting to make those repairs. We do have an asset management plan. We do have things in place, but dollars and cents still have to pay for other things as well. And I think that those limitations or having to have those revenues in that direction limits what you can do in the tourism, business improvement, beautification.
Does the province have Fort Francis under a housing target right now?
When I was at AMO, I didn't see the case study for Fort Francis, but I did see the case study for Thunder Bay.
Okay.
And they were projecting a 14.1% increase between now and 2050 on their population, and that was a market that was in need.
Oh.
So I don't have the statistics to talk directly about Fort Francis. But yeah, just from speaking to the professionals that are in our area, property management companies, realtors, they all indicate that there is still a strong need here in Fort Francis.
Housing infrastructure is a challenge because it's a very big macro issue, that issue of housing and infrastructure, because as you said, it goes into economic diversification, getting the job people to the community to get housing to work in the community. In your sense and in your opinion, has the business community sort of tried to step up and tried to solve the issue as well, whether that be renting housing for themselves to bring people into the community? And what role do you see yourself as counselor and council playing in helping businesses to attract new hires to the community? Because if you don't have housing, people aren't going to move there to work.
Yeah, so I'm aware of several different businesses and agencies that have had to start buying and or securing housing, whether that's leasing, um, partnerships, what have you. A lot of that is connected to either new Canadian workers or out of the region workers, and even they're having challenges to secure those. So I would say that that's kind of inflating our housing market as well, because now you have new players that are coming in and buying up assets or buying up multifamily properties that normally would be just residents renting an apartment, but now it's say a hotel or a restaurant or a health authority or mine or a contractor per se. So I think that that's keeping not just the housing market, but even the rental market inflated more than it should be.
One area that I want to talk about before we turn the subject to the accomplishments is your close proximity being a border community to the United States. Now, we have all seen what's been going on over the last few months, and in your opinion, do you believe that Fort Francis is being resilient in the headwinds of what's going on between Canada and the United States right now with the ongoing trade war?
So I don't want to take this too far out of context, but I personally haven't felt any of the
Okay.
tariff like that. I'm just speaking for me. I'm just speaking
Yeah.
for my household. But I haven't felt a single impact as of yet. I am
Do you
seeing
see
lots and I'm hearing lots.
do you see a lot of Americans still coming across the border?
I was actually just talking about this yesterday. So yeah, we have a lot of tourists that come to our backyard, the whole region to fish, hunt, and visit. We have a very beautiful backdrop here, lots of lakes, lots of great fishing. Fort Francis hosts a world class Fort Francis Canadian Bass Championship every summer. We still have, I think it's over 140 teams that come from the U.S. and Canada. So I don't think we've noticed a major like what is it, like a decrease in that. um what I have noticed is a lot of the camps are starting to rotate their in and out dates. So it used to be like when I was a teenager, it'd be like, Saturday was the really big day, and the whole town would be log jammed with vehicles trying to get across the border. But now they've kind of rotated like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So now it's flowing quite a bit better, and we have a lot of construction happening this summer. I want to congratulate the administration on getting those projects moving. I know that some of them aren't completing like we would have liked by September 19th, but progress is still progress. So I have to say Chimmy Miigwech and thank you to the administration for moving those files forward.
Where does the tourism industry to go forward from here? Because you're always trying to expand. And what role do you see yourself as council and counselor playing in supporting the tourism industry? Because there's always a sense that recreation tourism is a losing item when it comes to a municipal budget because you never reap the full benefits of your investments into recreational or tourism. So from your perspective, as Fort Frances is a tourist community, how important is it for you as council to support it in this sort of challenging time? And I know you say you don't see the challenges with it personally, but there might be some who say, okay, we've seen a decrease or a slight decrease in the people coming to our community.
So presently, Fort Frances is right at the border. So we're seen more as the service hub,
Okay.
and pass through at the moment. Like we're a hotel, steak and a beer before they get on a flight, or before they do the next part of their drive. Like a lot of the guys are coming from Milwaukee, Chicago, Detroit, kind of like your Midwest metro areas, unless they're flying in and then flying back out again. But that's kind of like where the concentrations are. So doing what we do best is servicing those needs. We have a brand new hotel coming in, Motel 6 extended suites. I believe it's over 70 rooms, so that's going to increase our capacity. A big shout out to Ben Cohen at Rideout Bay Developments and Mitan Jigaming First Nation for bringing that to our community. Outside of that, we have a new microbrewery over the last few years that is servicing Fort Frances and those guests, the Hallett Brewery. So shout out to Tanya and Andrew over there at the Hallett Brewery. If you're listening, we really appreciate you as being a vibrant part of our community. And I just want to say, like, we have a growing Indigenous culture and tourism offering with a very extensive powwow ceremony list that draws hundreds and hundreds of people to various different First Nation communities across the lower part of Treaty 3. And then
How important, sorry, I'm just going to pick up on that statement that you just said there. How important is it for you to build that and foster that relationship between the town and the First Nations that surround Fort Frances? Because in 2025, I'm seeing more and more municipalities working closer and closer with their First Nation communities that surround them. So, from yourself, who has, I don't want to say a stake in it, but as someone who is married to, as you said, an Indigenous person with Indigenous children, how important is it for yourself to build that and foster that relationship with the First Nations that surround Fort Frances to work collaboratively towards a common goal instead of 12 different entities working towards 12 different common goals?
Yeah, like I'm always a firm believer that more can be done when things are aligned and people are working together and communicating. How I look at it personally is my children are watching, and I want to make sure that I'm representing their best interests as well as the residents' best interests. Um, I I think that there's great potential in what can be done. I know I can't remember if it was NOMA. I believe it was a NOMA report that came out that one of the biggest improvements we could make is if we increase Indigenous participation in the labor force. I worked for Seven Generations Education Institute for some time, working in their mining workforce preparation program, and we identified that the social supports were lacking, and that was the biggest barriers to employment, whether it's transportation, sobriety, skills, parent groups, childcare, housing. So we have a region, well, a district that's quite expanse. Like we have over an hour drive from Fort Frances just to Big Island and Big Grassy, and then if you go north, you got another almost hour to Lac LaCroix. So we have geographic challenges that have to be surmounted, and that's why I think partnerships need to be made to have different housing product available that can get them into our community area where they can get to jobs. On the community, there isn't a lot of jobs in each specific community. Like my wife and children are from Couchiching First Nation, which is our neighboring First Nation. They have a golf course, an arena, like 2 gas stations, and then like their admin building. But there isn't really like there's not a lot of spin-off jobs. There's not a lot of jobs in that locality without coming into Fort Frances. So, and that's the closest community. Like I said, some of these communities are quite far, and we have no active transportation in Fort Frances or in the district that can get people to work.
But at the same time, the economic spin-off of those First Nations into the community is high. So it is detriment to the community of Francis to collaborate with them, even if they are an hour and a half, 2 hours away. The people of those communities, because Fort Francis is that feeder community where people come and do their shopping, come do some of their
Yeah, exactly.
recreational. So
Yeah.
there's that economic spin-off of that collaboration that needs to happen as well. And I should just mention for those who are listening outside of Ontario, the acronym NOMA means the Northern Ontario Municipal Association. It is basically a smaller version of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, which is basically only for Northern Ontario. And I believe Northern Ontario means basically Greater Sudbury North, which still shocks me, but we'll just leave that there.
Yeah, we have a very big province.
Oh, you do? I've driven through it a few
I'm not
hundred
sure if you're
times.
aware. Um, but yeah, we're very close to Manitoba.
Yeah. Um, I want to flip the original question a bit because every community has its fair share of challenges. Let's put that aside. What's the thing that you look at and you say, this is what we've got going right in Fort Francis? This is the accomplishment that I'm proud of from a governmental perspective, from a residential perspective, from a community perspective. What's that thing that you look at and say, this is what we do right in our community?
We're a community of givers, and I feel like when there is a challenge or a need, that it's always met, and that that comes very dear to my heart and to my family. It's not just Fort Francis. I would say it's probably the whole district. Um, Case in point, my dad was a cancer survivor, lost work for several years, and the community rallied around. And whether it was somebody co-signing a loan for a vehicle, or making sure we had groceries, or making sure that we were taken care of. Like I have 5 siblings and myself, so that's a pretty big house to take care of, and that's just my example, but there's like hundreds and hundreds of examples of how tight knit our community can be when there's a cause that we rally around. Outside of that, I want to say that our community is very focused on improving our recreation and family amenities. We've just completed this last year and a bit a brand new splash park and revitalization of Legion Park. And we had our first Canada Day celebration there where the park was completely packed with people. And it was just so refreshing to see a almost abandoned park to just a completely revitalization of a community wide place that people can go and see grandkids grow up and play together, and attract people saying this is a great place to live. So that's just something that's more fresh that's been done. And then outside of that, go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, is that because Fort Francis, and this could be a weird question that I ask, but I'm going to try and ask it in a way that it makes it sound like I'm a smart person asking the question. But I get a sense when I was doing research on Fort Francis that Fort Francis is very much an intergenerational community. It is a community that you have long history and long roots in, and I don't say you as in like anyone who's living there. There are people who have been there for hundreds of years or generations of families who have come there and just stayed and made roots that people want to have pride in their community. So that's why they will help out their fellow man, help out their fellow neighbor with anything that's going on. There seems to be a pride within Fort Francis that you don't see often in more remote communities. Because when you think of a remote community, you think you're going to be sort of secluded, so everyone's going to sort of work against each other. But I get a sense that Fort Francis, you really, truly are a community.
Yeah, and I would think that we're growing that even more as of late. I feel like we've made really great strides and inroads with lots of different people groups. We rallied around a lot of the Ukrainian families when that conflict arose. Like I was already alluding to earlier, like we're repairing a lot of relationships with Indigenous communities, especially the ones with Agency One, and we are taking in a lot of new Canadians, and they're being well received. We just like a shout out to all of those new Canadian workers that have come in. Like we wouldn't be able to run our McDonald's, our Tim Hortons, our hotel industry without them. And they're working very hard to make sure that those services haven't skipped a beat.
I appreciate that. I want to turn to my last segment, and it's my favorite segment because it gets to know your favorite parts about the town of Fort Frances. Now, you talked about some of the tourism aspects already, but I'm going to sort of make you do the little Sophie's Choice here, if you don't mind. What's the one thing that you think everyone should come and see when they come to Fort Frances? Is there a hidden gem in your community that you say, if you come here, you have to see this? What's that for you?
Oh, it's Rainy Lake for sure.
Why is
Um,
that?
it's beautiful. You can boat from our marina. We have some of the most affordable docking in the province. You can leave that system and move over to the States. You can hit all of the little Shays, Island View, Thunderbird, like all the lake spots. A lot of people reside on Rainy Lake. It it just it has so much to offer: hydroglyphics, great bass fishing. Um, yeah, I don't know. Outside of that,
Is there a spot that you can go and decompress at? Or is it Rainy Lake? Is there a spot that after a long day of council meetings, after a long day of budget deliberations, you can go and just let it all go? And I'm gonna say this before you answer. You can't say your house. Where in the
yeah,
community do you go to just decompress after a long day?
I would say if it's not the Memorial Sports Center watching our Fort Francis Junior A Lakers, it'd probably be Heron Landing Golf Course just on the Amarsh Bay on Rainy Lake. Um, my children and my wife are avid golfers, so we're probably gonna go out there and smash some balls around.
Well, when I come through Fort Francis next, I need to go out to the golf course with you. So just put that in your day planner. So when I come out there next summer, it's on the agenda now. But before I let you go, I have $1 million question I need to ask you because I'm cautious of time here. What, in your opinion, makes the town of Fort Francis such a unique place to live, to work, and to raise a family?
Well, and I think you forget like the biggest one is to play. Like we're an outdoors paradise. If you want an ATV, you want to boat, fish, hunt, hike. We have so many different hidden waterfalls and trails, and just the connectivity, like we kind of alluded to earlier. I know where I can get a side of beef. I know where I can buy a truck. I know where my kids can go to school. I know the teacher. Like we just have that kind of connectivity in this small but growing community. And I couldn't envision another place to raise my kids.
How is Fort Francis one of those communities that you know where all the kids are because their bikes are in the front lawns of someone's house?
I mean, it definitely when I grew up that you played outside till the lights came on. It was kind of that kind of thing. But yeah, like a lot of us as parents know where the kids are and what they're playing. My daughter's birthday's coming up in a couple weeks here, and she invites like all of her brother's friends, and they all know each other by first name. Like it's yeah, it's home. I don't know how else to explain it. I wish the best for our residents, and I hope that we continue to grow in the right way. I do appreciate being asked to be on your podcast today. Thank you so much for reaching out. It means a lot when we have the opportunity to showcase the good things about Fort Francis. And yeah,
Well, now that I know you, now that I know that I can reach out to you and say, "Hey, I saw that something's going on in Fort Francis. Let's come on the show and talk about it," because we have a listenership across Canada and we are on TV across Canada. So we'd love to have more voices from Fort Francis on the show. So thank you so much for doing this, Caleb. Always a pleasure to sit down and chat with someone new and learn more about the many, many municipalities across this great country. So thank you so much.
thanks, Chris. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Cross Border Interviews. Now, we hope you've enjoyed today's conversation and gained some valuable insights into the world of local municipal politics in the province of Nova Scotia. Now, for those who haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platforms, or if you're watching this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button today. Your support means the world to us. So share this episode with your friends, your family, and yes, even your community, and help keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we will be back with a brand new episode of Cross Border Interviews shortly. Till then, everyone.